Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. Doug Eroh is the president of Penske Motor Group and the president, general manager of Longo Toyota, the number one volume Toyota dealer in the world since 1967. Doug oversees the day-to-day operations at Longo, including sales, fixed operations, marketing, guest service, and training. Ed Roberts is the Chief Operations Officer at Bozard Ford Lincoln. Bozard has been a family-owned and operated dealership in St. Augustine since 1949. Both gentlemen are great friends of the automotive and fixed operations community. Doug and Ed, welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Thank you, Ted. It's glad to be back.
Thank you, Ted. Great to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
I appreciate the opportunity as well. I know our audience does. Ed, I know that recently you had a chance to spend some time when you were on the West Coast, and Doug was able to arrange to have you see a whole lot of the campus there at what he's doing at Longo Toyota. So if I can, for anybody who possibly doesn't know, Doug, let me start with you and then Ed. Doug, tell us a little bit about your organizations, maybe the geography, because there is some geography involved, the brands, maybe the units sold last year, number of employees, and maybe a little bit about your personal background before you came to where you are today.
Sure. No, absolutely. Ed was kind enough to visit us this past summer, and unfortunately, I was not here that day, so I'm sorry I didn't get to see you in person, Ed, but I know you had a good experience, so thanks for stopping by while you're on the West Coast. No, thanks, Ted. You know, I am very privileged and honored to represent Longo Toyota and Penske Motor Group. Longo Toyota, I think, as you know, is the largest Toyota dealership in the world for the past 55 consecutive years. We're working on 56. That's, by the way, not something we ever take for granted. We got to earn that every single day on the back of the experience that we provide to our guests. So that's kind of our mantra. It keeps us going. And we never really, it's not something that we just is given, right? We've got to earn it. So I'm honored to be part of that. We've got a great team at Longo Toyota. We have 550 team members. We're located just east of downtown Los Angeles in Southern California. You know, our market is really the Southern California market. We've been here for a long time. You know, we actually serve generations of customers now, which I'm sure Ed does the same, with the length of time that they've been in business. So I've got great tenure with our team, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. But last year, just to give a reference point, we sold about 18,000 new and used vehicles at Longo Toyota. This year will be a little bit less, frankly, which I think everybody's facing with the supply chain challenges that have hit our industry, only restrained by production at this point. We've got great demand. Supply is a challenge. We think we'll probably sell about almost 15,000 new and used this year. So a little bit less, but we've got a ton of orders out there for customers that we're filling every single day. So we're part of Penske Motor Group, which is a privately held group in the Penske family of companies owned by Greg Penske. We have 4 dealerships, Longo Toyota here in El Monte, California. Also Longo Lexus, which is on our same facility here, which is the largest Lexus dealer in the Western area for the last 33 consecutive years. So also a great store here. Collectively, we'll sell about 25,000 new and used cars on this campus. We also have Lexus of Stevens Creek in San Jose, California, and Silicon Valley. And our newest dealership is actually in North Dallas market in Texas. So we're growing there as well, and honored to represent the Toyota and Lexus brands at this point, and we're just a big part of their business. So again, thanks for having me, Ted, and I look forward to talking a little bit more.
Wonderful. Ed?
All right. Well, Doug, thanks for opening your doors and allowing me to come in when you was on vacation last time.
Sure.
We were all on a journey rather than a destination, and when we can do that, and we know that we're on a journey. When you're on your journeys through life, you try to find things that can make you better. And I was just happened to be on a journey out in the West Coast and stopped by your place there and had to check out the legendary Longo Toyota. And I told Ted when we was recapping about it that there is a recipe to success, and your store is very cultural driven. I was impressed with a lot of elements that we'll talk about here in a couple of minutes. But good job out there.
Thank you.
Here at Bozard, we don't have quite the employees that you have there. You said 550, I'm at 311. But we're in our third generation, talking about generations. We're in our third generation of family ownership here. We're in St. Augustine, Florida, a small town, so to speak. It's the oldest town in America. It's the oldest city in the U.S. But we're about 50,000 in population, and the county itself is about 200,000. So what we do with inside our area is huge, because we're not in a metro area by any means. But it's all about our people and making things happen. You can drop that one off the front of what Doug said he sold last year, and you'll be right in line with where we're at. And I think our fixed ops are probably very similar. But put it in perspective of how we got here. 10 years ago, we was right around that 40 mark with employees. We'd dance around 39 or 40, 41. And today we have 311. So in the last 10 years, we've really put ourselves on the map and have benefited from substantial growth. Still tons of opportunity in front of us. There's no destination. We haven't arrived. We're here to learn. We're here to get better every single day. And when we can learn from each other, we all win. We make our industry better.
It's a great privilege to have both of you on today's event. And Doug, you mentioned just a few moments ago, the average tenure of your team members is extraordinarily high at Penske and Longo. And Ed, you've got a compelling story of growth that you were just alluding to. Doug, first, if you would, give us a little insight, Doug, into your hiring and training processes. I know you've done that once before, but it is certainly very unique. And I think that has a whole lot to do with the retention of your team as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we're grateful to have great retention and great tenure among our team. I think our average tenure is over 11 years here, which is pretty remarkable. We have team members. I think I have 3 team members that just celebrated their 38th year. So pretty amazing. Those are our longest tenured team members. We recently had a parts director retire after 43 years. So that gives you a little bit of insight into the longevity that's here. And look, longevity and retention of your team clearly helps you build a culture and certainly drives consistency with process and with your guest experience. So that's where I see the value in it. We're pretty meticulous about hiring. We go through a pretty lengthy process. We kind of have a joke that we tell our candidates that it's hard to get in and it's hard to get out. And what we mean by that is it takes a little longer to get hired here than it might somewhere else, just because we do a thorough background. We make sure the candidate touches many managers before they actually, get to do a final interview. And the final interview is actually with me. So I have an opportunity to actually speak with every candidate and do a final approval on them. And that's just a quality check, I think, on making sure that we don't have anybody slip through that maybe doesn't align with our culture. We're not trying to micromanage the situation, but certainly it's just, I look at it as a QC, just like you would with a car. You're going to QC that car when it comes out of your shop. We're going to QC the candidate before we make a final offer. And hard to get out means we have a good career path. We want to grow our team. We want to give them good training and development during their time, whether it be role specific or in general leadership and guest service and those kinds of things. So that's kind of our mantra and how we live into it.
Doug, I got to ask you, I was aware, because I've heard from you and from Greg before, that it is hard to get in. Is it still as hard to get in today in light of all the challenges that dealers around the country are having with, finding employees?
Yeah, I think everybody on this call, I'm sure, has faced over the last year and a half some labor shortages in their markets. Certainly we have. I would say we've weathered that pretty well, all things considered. There's certainly positions that we're hiring for today, and they tend to be the skilled positions like technicians and collision technicians and things like that. But overall, I've got a saying that, never be desperate, And I say that with respect to hiring, because if we feel like, oh my God, if somebody says to me, I need a body, I always correct them. We don't need a body. Anybody could have a body, but we're not going to throw bodies at it. We're going to have good quality people. And if it takes longer, and we've got to, tighten our belt straps a little bit and work a little longer and harder to fill a position, or cover for a position until it's filled. We'll do that rather than compromise on our standards. So it's hard to do. I got managers coming in, hey, I need somebody, I need people to wash car, and I get it. So we really try not to be desperate in a situation that really kind of forces you to be in many cases just to fill a position in a tight labor market. So.
Good point. Ed, you've had some extraordinary growth there. Give us a little insight into your hiring and processes.
Well, I want to touch with Doug there with 11 years, average tenure is pretty strong. And I'm not there, certainly, because our growth is, best case scenario, I could have 40 people that's been here 10 years or more. And I do have several that's been here more than 10 years. I have one that's in the 30s and then several in their 20s. But our growth has really came over the last 10 years, as we talked about. And it really is being intentional about hiring. And it sounds like Doug's very intentional. I wrote down that he gives the final stamp of approval. But one of the things that we do is they got to check three things. And when I talk to a hiring manager, we got 3 C's. 1 C is character. Are they who we want representing our brand? The next C is chemistry. Can they fit in? Can they bring something to the team? The next one is competency. But I'm not really looking in most cases here whether they can do the job. I'm looking, are they trainable? And if they're trainable, that's exactly who I want, because that's who's going to be with me, like Doug said, the 11 plus years, because there's that career path that they'll have within the store. And we've been fortunate to not have a shortage of labor, even though everybody around us does. We have a lot of career paths here for not just technicians, but for every position here in the store. And we make that known. And once that starts to compound, then they're telling their other friends that, hey, come here, you can start here and you can grow into this and whatever else. We didn't lose anybody through the pandemic. Certainly Florida operated a lot different than California. So hats off to you there, Doug, for having to go through that out there. And we continue to grow. We're invested with a lot of technical schools, and that we're really able to go in there and pull out the cream of the crop. And it's one thing, a lot of dealers will tell you they're invested into those technical schools, but they go in and do the same thing that the other dealers do. They show up, they're there for a job fair. They're not really engaged with the school. We're engaged with the school from the standpoint when those kids start signing day, we're there for them. We're making a big old giant party out of it. We go up there and visit them. We hold training classes of our own there. So 1, I can know who the cream of the crop is. And 2, when we do hold a job fair there, the line at Bozard line is 10 times what everybody else is. And there's been some cases where our line is longer than everybody else combined, but that's from involvement. And that's nothing different with the brand. That's just being involved with the school, and anybody can do that. So please just don't go out and just check the box that you got involved and you do job fairs. Get involved and let those kids know you, because that's the future of our business. And then give them a path. One of the things that I talk about a lot is we hear all this noise about Gen Zs and millennials don't want to work. They don't want to work without a path. They want to know what tomorrow looks like. They look ahead, and if they don't see what tomorrow looks like, they're looking for the next job. And we've experienced some of that. We try to have a career path for everybody, but sometimes we don't keep filling that element of what's next for them. And when you don't, those same ones that you carried through that will go find it elsewhere. And a lot of times it's here. We're blessed for that. So they look around and say, hey, I want to go do this. And they come to you and tell you what it is. But you got to keep those things out in front of them. I'll give you a quick example. I have one gentleman that this month just moved into the sales department. November's his first month here. He started with me in a training program and then grew from there and moved into the shop and then took over as a team leader. And then he's got really good communication skills, turned into a service advisor, and we didn't give him a path past service advisor. And he kept looking. And thankfully, because of his connections here, he didn't look outside of us. He looked and went and told sales manager, hey, I want to sell cars. And absolutely wanted it. But that was a failure on our part because we didn't keep that next step in front of him. You had to go find it. And if you keep those elements in front of Gen Zs and millennials, those guys will surprise you what they really are capable of.
Wow. I think it's fascinating to see both of you gentlemen taking notes as the other one is talking, because it's not just me and the audience. And I think a great benefit of learning from each other. Doug, I have heard you talk about in the recent past the Penske way, something that you and your team created. And from what I have heard, it's a group of 20 underlying principles that are focused on the guests, the team members, the company's reputation. And Ed, you have created something very similar. Ed, well, Doug, starting with you, tell us a little bit about some of those principles, and then I want to hear what Ed's got as well.
Absolutely, and you got a good observation, Ted. I have been writing stuff down, so I think we all learn from each other, and that's the value of this program that you put on. So thank you for doing it. You know, I got character, chemistry, and competency. So those are some good filters, I think, when we're doing some hiring here. And you know, what does tomorrow look like? I think that's great. You know, I agree with Ed in the fact that Gen Z and Gen Y, they are absolutely people that will come to work. You just have to give them an identity. And I think that identity is to answer your question, Ted, about the Penske way, is really at the core of our values and who we are. And you know, I probably showed you before, but we all wear this lanyard here, and it has our name on it and where we're from. And then on the back of it, it has our 20 principles. So it's always in front of you. It's easy to remember, and you know, sort of a theme for each day of the week. And you know, I can go through all of them, but I always use two that I always use as examples. Without looking, I can tell you that day 6 is it's called the 10-foot rule, right? And the 10-foot rule just applies to every one of our team members, right? If there's someone, a guest or anyone within 10 feet, sometimes I'll say 20, make sure you greet them. Make sure you say hello. Make sure you welcome them to our business. Make them feel comfortable. People walking into a car dealership, you know, look, somebody goes to a grocery store maybe every other day, but they go to get their car serviced every, you know, 4 to 6 months, and they buy a car every 3 to 4 years. So it's not a frequent activity. It can be daunting. It can be uncomfortable. This is a big place. So we really want to make sure we're making people feel comfortable. It also applies to, hey, is there a safety issue? Is there anything broken? Is there trash on the ground? Let's pick it up, right? Just basic little things, right? Let's be aware of our surroundings. Let's walk with a purpose, right? We're not just walking around with our phone, right? We're actually looking at what's around us and thinking about that guest experience. And another big one of our values is day 16, which is called communication, right? I think it's at the root of all of our problems. Usually when we have an issue, it's because of our communication. So when we hire people and when we train them, we talk about the perfect handoff. And since it's football season, we can use that analogy, right? You know, not one person here carries the ball for a customer, right? If you think about it, right? The technician services the car, but the service writer is the one that's communicating with the guest. The same guest might deal with somebody else when they arrive, like a valet or a greeter, or they might see a cashier, right? So how that guest is handed off, right, from one position to the next is so critical, right? That communication, that we talk to each other. Hey, this is what's going on. This is the guest's expectation, right? That communication is happening is so critical. So we really preach that perfect handoff in all areas, right? There's not one position that we have that completely deals with a customer. Our sales consultants, yes, they deal with the customer, but there's a handoff to the finance manager, right? So that has to be perfect, right? And that's what makes an organization, in my mind, feel seamless, right? That we're all kind of on the same team. We're all here for that guest experience to make sure it's real easy. So those are just some of them. We've got a lot of principles. But one thing that we've really gotten back to here in a post-COVID world where we can actually have meetings is we just do a quick shift meeting every day, you know, at the beginning of the shift, and we use that day's theme, you know, and today's theme just happens to be attitude. It's your choice. And really, what does that mean, right? What does that mean in terms of having a positive attitude? So we just try to have a quick discussion about that. Of course, we talk about any other priorities or goals we may have for the day, but just a good check-in for us to have, you know, every couple times a day.
Ed?
That's strong because I'm making notes here, but it's very similar. We have daily meetings every day. Our deal today was on confidence. You have to elude confidence when you're talking with someone, whether it's amongst ourselves, whether it's with customers, whether it's whatever. But talking about picking up the trash that's laying there or whatever, Doug's exactly right. When I went to his place is clean, it's spotless, everything's organized. And a lot of people make those comments when they come here, but there's intentionality behind that because those things lead to efficiencies. And when they're having to chase down and find a piece of equipment because they don't know where it's at and they got to walk through different buildings. He's in the same situation I'm in, or in multiple buildings, and you got to go find that stuff. You're losing efficiency there. So organization is key to keeping things going, and people feel proud to keep those things, but put them back where they're supposed to be, rather than hang on to them, put them in their toolbox or whatever, because they want it to be available when they need it. And then shifting back to bringing people in, yes, it's tough to get in here with us, and we want it that way. It's very purposeful. And I had one service advisor that waited 2 years to get in here because we don't typically hire those positions. We grow from within. And I told her, when the opportunity presents itself, we'll find a way to get you here, but you may be waiting some time and end up getting laid off that person ended up getting laid off from their store during COVID, and we made room for them. But typically we grow from within and we want to do that. But once you get in, you become a Bizardian. And when you're a Bizardian, you're part of BTOP. BTOP is best team on the planet. And BTOP, my construction hat, everybody has a construction hat. Best team on the planet. And with that, we're always under construction. We talked about destinations and journeys earlier. We're never there. We're never arrived. There's always the opportunity to get better. So we're always trying to construct the best team on the planet. So I had the best team on the planet, but we're still constructing it. And we'll be constructing it tomorrow and the next day. Because as soon as you back up, that's when you start losing it.
Ed, today's the first time I've heard you say Bozardian, so now I've got possibly a new hashtag as well. Ed, you came up as, you came through the ranks and you were fixed ops director before you became COO, which is not the typical rise in many dealerships, as we all know. Ed, talk to us a little bit. You mentioned facilities and walking through. Give us a little bit of a insight into your fixed operations there. I know you've got a very large shop, but number of service bays, maybe number of techs. I know you've got some mobile units as well.
So we have 93 techs today. I have 98 bays that are concreted in, and I have 8 bays that are rolling. So I have 106 bays total. I got 3 more mobile vans coming, so we'll be at 11. I think I said 93 technicians, but ultimately, yes, I come through fixed ops. But that's what creates our brand loyalty. We talk about selling a vehicle and making that an experience, but they do that once every 2 years, once every 5 years, depending on where that customer's at in their trade cycle and where they're at in life. But we're going to see them 5, 6, 10, 15 times during that ownership. And you got to make that the experience. And when you make that the experience, then you start wheeling in the brand loyalty. And for VinShare, nationally, the VinShare is less than 30%, meaning that 30% of your brand vehicles service at your store or at the dealership. And at times we bump 80%. We're not right there right now, but we're always in the 70s. And so we're 2.5 times the national average, but that's because we make service an experience. And when you make service an experience, the sales side of it becomes a little bit organic, but it's very intentional as well. You get some organic growth from the county growth and some of those other things, but that's what drives the brand loyalty, because all of these vehicles or all these dealerships has a service department tied to them. And they have a service department tied to them because these vehicles need service. It doesn't matter the brand, they all need service. And when you can make that experience enjoyable, then they want to come back and they don't think about who else to go see. Then we've added the restaurant to it. And with the restaurant there, it's cool to come to a car dealership twice a month just to take your family to have dinner. When you do that, those barriers are knocked down. You know that you can go see that same person because you don't have turnover. You know you can go see Alex when you go to service. You know you can go see Zach when you go to sales. And you don't have to worry about, who replaced Zach or whatever else. And then people do business with people. And when those people are here, and you take away the fear of going to a car dealer, because we are intimidating. We're huge. So there's a lot of stuff going on. There's people going everywhere, writing 320 repair orders a day. There's a lot happening. And when you can take that fear away, then that becomes inviting. And when it's inviting, then you start compounding the loyalty.
Wow. Doug, you had the benefit, I think it was 19 years at Toyota, working with, I'm going to imagine, at least hundreds of dealers all across the country. Give us a little bit of lay of the land there on fixed operations for your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, Ed, great to have somebody running a company that has a fixed ops background. I think there's a tremendous value in that. There's not enough of it, frankly, in this business. Our Lexus Stevens Creek general managers all came from a fixed ops background, so I really enjoy his perspective. So that's really good. My background's a little different. As you know, I worked on the OEM side of the business for a long time before I got back into retail. I started in retail, when I was going to school, and then kind of missed it. But definitely, I've been back 7 years now in the retail business. But spent a lot of time at Toyota and Lexus. Had an opportunity to visit with probably 700 or 800 different dealers over the course of my career across the country, and learned a lot of best practices from that. There's a lot of great dealers out there that I'm grateful to have known, and it's certainly influenced my ability here as running this business. So I'm grateful to have that background, and love the fixed ops part of our business. Just actually spent some time there today, talking to our team, and we have a similar footprint like Ed has. Excuse me. We have about 140 technicians. We have a large collision center that's on site as well. So we really want to be all things automotive to our guests. We want to not give them any reason to go anywhere else, right? So in terms of things like cosmetic work, we do, paintless dent repair and leather installations, and we actually have our own graphic and wrap shop now. We're doing graphics and wraps for cars. So anything that you might want to go sublet or go somewhere else, or glass, or for wheel repair, or those kinds of things, we want to be able to do everything in house. Frankly, it's good for us because we have the expertise. It's good for our guests, right? They know us, they trust us. We give them a reason to basically do everything with us, and not go down the street to somewhere that maybe doesn't have the same quality of technician or the same type of facility or experience. Our shop foremen collectively, there's 5 of them, and they collectively have over 100 years of experience, right? You think about that, the value in that, and the knowledge and the experience with every type of issue that could come up in a car. They've seen it, and I think that leads to better quality repair. It leads to a great training for our technicians, having those kinds of resources that are available to them on a day-to-day basis. So we've got a big fixed ops department, and it's really the core of our business, right? And I think we only want to grow that, and we're in a position to do that.
You gentlemen are both number one, respectively, with your brands on opposite sides of the country. I got to ask, Doug, you mentioned not only being number one, but not taking it for granted. What drives you? You're already number one. What drives you to maintain that, as you said, and to go for it, and to basically keep that urgency there?
Yeah, as I said, we never take that for granted. And you think about what we've been through in the last couple of years with COVID, and I think that was actually a great opportunity to reset the bar. As Ed mentioned, it was a little different in California here. We actually had a lot of restrictions, and in fact, for the first time in our 50-plus year history, we actually had to close. We closed down the showroom for over 2 months, which was pretty remarkable, right? And when you do that, it's kind of an opportunity to say, okay, hold on, we're number one. I don't care if we're closed. We're not going to ever lose that, right? So it was kind of an opportunity to recommit and reset that. And we took a mantra coming out of that, and we just said, everybody kept asking me, when are we going to go back to normal? When are things coming back to normal? And I said, no, forget normal. There's no more normal, right? This is going to be called back to better, right? There's no more back to normal, right? We got to be better at every area of our business. And, we kind of use that as our rallying cry. And I'd say our team has really latched onto that. And that's really been our driving force going forward. And no one ever wants to lose that. As Ed knows, when you're number one for your brand, you sit there at the top of the report, and it's easy for everyone else to find you. And
you're the target.
Put a target on you. So exactly. So we face that every day. We always have competition. I love the competition, by the way. I love when there's a new dealer that's making gains against us, because it just makes us better. It forces us to be better at what we do. How can innovate and think about ways to just make a better experience for a customer and to drive more business. So I love that, and I think the competition is what drives us the most. And we're just fortunate to have a team that's very driven, that likes to win, and really takes a lot of pride in being number one. It's an identity, and it's one that we are always committed to.
Doug, 2.5 years ago, during that time that you just mentioned, I looked on social media, and Ed's dealership was open, but what I saw him do was take those daily meetings outside of the dealership with the employees, outdoors there in Florida. And Ed, many of them, I saw that you put them online, okay, and that got a lot of attention from a lot of people. Ed, what drives you to be number one and maintain that?
At the start of this, Doug talked about communication is a lot of what we need. And we couldn't lose that level of communication just because COVID hit. So we still had to communicate, and we moved it out in the parking lot. Um, but another thing is, I want things to get back to normal. We all heard that. Well, there's not too many times to reset. And that was an opportunity to reset and really strengthen our business and create our own new normal if you are chasing a normal, because the normal is, I don't want to be normal. You got to set the bar. But it was our opportunity to reset and keep growing. So one of the things that I preach here daily, and I ask myself this daily, is what did I do to make an impact? Because I don't want to come in and get caught up in the day-to-day grind. And I don't want my people to come in and get caught up in the day-to-day grind. There's a big difference in being busy and being effective. So I'll ask them a lot, what did you do today to be effective? Don't ask what's going on or whatever else. I want to know that they're making an impact. And there's some days the day catches you and you don't make up a whole lot of ground. But as long as you ask yourself those questions every single day, every single week, you'll make an impact. And every single week turns into months, and it just continues to compound itself. It continues to grow. And that's how you grow from being bottom of the list to being up here where everybody's chasing. And it's cool to have people come out and visit. I hope that Doug found it flattering that I wanted to visit his store, because I want to learn from whoever's out there. Even when you go down to the store that's not really getting it done, there's still something there that they're doing that is better for us, that makes us more efficient, makes us better, makes us whatever. And I want to learn that. And I don't mind sharing that. So I invite people into our store all the time because I want to be able to give back, because I want to make our industry better. You tell somebody, I don't want my sales guy going home and telling his mom, I think I want to become a salesman. And her telling him, well, you need to reconsider that. I want her saying, where you come, I want her to be proud that he's a Blizzardian. And that's our opportunity to change that industry. And we may not change it today, tomorrow, but we can make an impact every single day to make our industry better.
Gentlemen, there's a lot of change afoot, potential change in the business. Ed, as you look out, what do you see for the importance of fixed operations as we move into this next new year and beyond?
Well, BEVs are gaining traction, and a lot of times we try to talk people out of buying a BEV when they come in. Well, you don't want it because of this. They've already done all the research. They're planning on buying it. We have to embrace BEVs. They're not going to need to come into service nearly as much. So if we didn't do a good job of bringing the other ones in, we got to do more than twice as good a job bringing these in to be able to retain them, because brand loyalty is a little bit at risk here. Where when these things go to EV, it's about whether it functions. There's not going to be a whole lot of issues that you have to service on them. There's going to be maintenance type things, but there's not going to be a lot of things that really pushes you to a different deal. So it's really that shiny new penny or the experience. And so we have to start with a plan, and you can't do that by just coming in hoping that it's going to be okay. You got to put a plan in place and work the plan to get better every day, to drive those guys in, to create the brand loyalty, so that we're ready for BEV, rather than talk people out of them, put our people in seats, let them go drive them so they can say, hey, I drove one of those Lightnings and that thing's cool, rather than you ain't gonna be able to get that anywhere. And it's just shifting the mindset.
And Ed, you're in Florida. Doug, you're in California. California has been all over the news about a lot of potential changes afoot. And I know that hasn't gone unnoticed by you and by Greg there. What about the importance of fixed ops in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ed made a great point about BEVs. The technology is changing quickly. As you mentioned, the California, the governor here has basically issued a mandate that says, by 2035, we want all vehicles to be zero emission. Now, I don't know that we'll get there per se, but certainly we're going to make a lot of progress in that area. And, we've been selling hybrid vehicles here for 20 plus years and plug-ins, and we actually sell hydrogen fuel cell cars. Now we sell BEVs. So I feel like we've got good experience at it, but it's, as it becomes a larger part of our business, it's really going to impact our fixed operations. So as I look at fixed operations, I really see kind of a short-term issue right here relative to the supply chain crisis that we're in, right? Because the supply chain crisis has caused us to sell less new vehicles, right? And as a result of that, theoretically, there's less new vehicles going to be coming into our service department over the next year or two. And I think Ed knows this as well. When you think about cars being older, franchise dealers, as a rule, have a harder time retaining older cars, right? So theoretically, this supply chain issue could have an impact on our units in operation and the number of cars we see coming through our service drive in the years to come. I think that's going to be faced by every dealer that's on this call today, and something that we have to get in front of. So one thing I would tell you that we're very, very focused on right now is prepaid maintenance and making sure that the guests that we do have a reason to come back and service with us beyond the great experience, but we give them some value. I just sat through a presentation that showed the retention for guests that have prepaid maintenance and those that don't. And it's really remarkable. You see customers that have prepaid maintenance coming in to your service department really every 6 or 7 months. And I think for those that don't, the number was like 800 days, right? So the frequency of visit, the retention of that customer is so important. So we've really focused on that. I'm super proud of our team. Last month, we actually sold over 1,000 prepaid maintenance contracts on our service drive that equate to 5 services each. So, I look at this as an insurance policy. We're making a bit of an investment in our future, making sure that our customers are going to have a reason to come back to us when we're likely going to see less of them. We've got to drive that retention number so much higher. So that's kind of a short-term issue. I think that will, you have this period of time probably from, mid-21 through what will probably be mid-23, let's call it 2 years, where there's just going to be less new cars sold. So we've got to be planning for that now and trying to drive that future business for ourselves. Second part of that is really where we go forward from here with respect to the different powertrains that are coming. How much can these cars be serviced? I go back to that, being all things automotive, right? Because cars still need details. They still need cosmetic repair, even if they're BEVs, and there may not be so much, heavy line maintenance needed on those. But I can tell you from where we are, we're actually in a planning process right now to build an all-new service shop. We're going to build the service department of the future. It's a huge project. I'm excited to be part of it. But our service shop has taken care of us for a really long time. But we've got a plan for the next 35 years. What's coming? What does the powertrain look like of the future? What kind of shop do we need? How many diagnostic bays do we need versus lifts and things like that? So we're going through that planning exercise right now, and we're looking to break ground next year. So that's one thing our team's excited about. We've got an eye to the future. That's going to take a couple of years in the planning and execution process, but I think it just shows our team that, hey, don't worry, because I think the general consensus is that if I'm a service technician, I'm very concerned about EVs, right? I don't want to have these things because it's gonna make me lose, not have enough work in the future. So we're saying, hey, we want to get more of that work. We're going to build a shop where everybody wants to come to. That there's going to be good trust in us being able to diagnose whatever car with whatever engine it might have that's on the road. So that's sort of got our short-term thing. We need more of our current customers, and our long-term planning is let's build that shop for the future. Let's do it now because it's coming fast.
Doug, a lot of notes being made right about now. Last question for today for both of you gentlemen. I'll come to you first, Doug, and then Ed to bring it home. Doug, as here we are, mid-November, looking out into the horizon for our audience, dealers, managers watching. What recommendations or what advice do you have for our audience looking into 2023 from your crystal ball? What should they be planning for? And we've heard a little bit now from you, some things that you're doing. What do you think you'd recommend to our dealer audience? Doug, you first and then Ed.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think, our planning environment's real interesting right now because we do have all this change coming at us, change in the powertrains of the cars that we're going to be selling and servicing in the future, change in the economy and some headwinds we have with inflation. But I think the biggest thing we can all do is remain flexible, be adaptable, right? Because if we go back to 2020, none of us saw coming what's now ensued over the last 2.5 years. And I think those that have thrived because they've stayed on top of things, they've changed, they've adapted, they've been flexible with their business, right? This is a, as we say here, this is a road course. right? This is not a oval, right? We're not going around in a circle. We've got to make those turns, and sometimes turns come at us that we don't expect. So I think remaining flexible is really important. This one last thing I'll say, that we just actually did this, and I'd love to share it because it went so well. But just like most dealers out there, we have a significant number of customers waiting for cars, right? There's been a supply chain issue. They're waiting months. We've got customers waiting over a year for vehicles. And frankly, the numbers of customers waiting have gotten so big for operations of this size, and really for any dealer, that it's hard to manage, right? It's hard to communicate with those customers on a frequent basis and give them the best information possible. So we actually just did this. We called it, it's kind of a tongue in cheek, but we called it "Dude, Where's My Car?" And it was a Zoom call that we invited our customers to. Anyone that had an order with us, you get on the Zoom. We actually did it last night. And as a matter of fact, we had over 400 guests actually spend 2 hours, believe it or not. And at the end of the 2 hours, I had to end the call and say, thank you very much. We were just out of time, but we still had another 100 questions in the queue. But I think what that reinforced for me is how engaged our customers are about the products we're selling, about the ability to get one of those products, and even the future stuff that's coming at us. They want to know more about it. And dealers, I think, can be a great resource in that. Let's not let these third parties and other kind of new startup brands come in and own that space. We own that space as dealers, right? We're the trusted advisor in their hometown and their community. So let's continue to be that. And that'll keep us differentiated into the future. So thanks for the opportunity.
Ted, I'm going to touch on that just a bit. Doug, I don't think they're necessarily engaged to the product like that. I think they're engaged with Longo like that, because that's your level of involvement that's created that. Some of the things that I'm going to work on, we just passed Halloween, and I got spooked a little bit there that, hey, I'm not doing enough to increase VIN share. And one of the things that we're going to do is, one, create annual services for BEVs, and two, everybody knows I'm in the mobile business, and rather than go to destinations and service a customer and maybe pick up 2 or 3 on the way back or whatever else, I want to go to mobile service destinations and hit hospitals and really expand my brand image with those places. And I'm not just going to service Ford or Lincoln vehicles. I'm going to service some of Doug's Toyotas. I'm going to service everything. And that's our opportunity to introduce our brand outside of the store. And maybe I might just give away some gift cards to our restaurant. But there's opportunity. There's always opportunity to grow your business. There's always opportunity to think outside the box. So that's my challenge to everybody in 23 is, what are you doing to do something different in 23 than you've done in 22 that's really going to drive your business? And don't be in it for the short game. You have to have a short-term plan, but plan for what that's going to do for you for tomorrow, because when you're in it for the long game, that's when we all win.
We could easily go all day with this. This is amazing. Doug and Ed, fascinating information. I got to do this. I got to invite you back in 2023 at some point to bring you both back and just kind of give us an update on some of the stuff that you're doing. I think fascinating conversation. I appreciate, and our audience appreciates your time. And Doug and Ed Roberts, amazing job. Congratulations to both of you, respectively, in your organizations and what you've done. And thank you so much on behalf of the Fixed Ops community for being here today.
Thank you for what you're doing as well, Ted, because you're the one bringing it to everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Ted. We love you sharing these best practices and love what you're doing on the philanthropic side as well. So thanks for all your efforts, and it's great to be here.
Doug Eroh and Ed Roberts here today at the Fixed Ops Roundtable.